Today's the day that I'm going to paint those poppies in my backyard. I'm Pat from Scrivener Art and Design in Parksville, British Columbia on Vancouver Island. I love sharing my knowledge and teaching you how to paint. I hope that you're getting value from my videos. If you are, give them a thumbs up, subscribe to my channel, and leave a comment or question below. So let's get on with video. I've set up my Plein easel outside and it's a beautiful day, a little bit of wind, and I'm just sketching in these poppies. Now you can't really see them, but I put a picture up here in the left-hand corner. And I'm going to do a few studies and just try painting these. I'm not generally too much of a plein air painter. I tend to like to stay in my studio. However, I think it's good practice to get outside and really look at your subject and try some different things. So it's easy enough for me to set it up in my yard, and I can make a few trips from my studio rather than trying to cart everything out of my car. So that's always been a bit of a barrier for me on the plein air painting, and I think every summer I say I'm going to do it more, but I just don't get around to it. So I'm thinking this summer maybe I will just start painting close to home, as in right in my own backyard. I'm using a very limited palette in this painting. 3 primaries, and I also have an orange, pre-mixed orange color as well. So I'm loosely trying to put in the petals and capture some of the shading. When painting outside with acrylic, it tends to dry pretty quickly, which can be kind of a disadvantage. There are some things you can do to eliminate this, or at least help it out, and that would be to add a little bit of retarder to your paint, or even a glazing medium, or some GAC 500. All of those things will work as extenders. You can also keep your paints wetter by misting them with water. And there is also a paint called Acrylic Open, which does stay wet longer. I have tried it. I'm not really in love with it, but each to their own. You know, it might be something that suits you well. And I still have some tubes. I may try it again. So I'm using a cup easel here that I had purchased a few years ago. And since then, I think they've modified their designs, and this particular one isn't available anymore. It has the little cups along the side for little wee containers of paint. Now, I find that I don't use it this way. I found that rather cumbersome to be opening those containers and closing the containers. So I just put it in a small Stay Wet palette and use that on the tray below. And then I mix in this palette. But what I like about it is that it's very small, and it attaches onto a tripod. So I have a really lightweight tripod that I take with me to put it on, and I use my other heavier tripod. Today I used it for my camera. So I don't like taking my really good tripod out into the field because it is heavier and it's just more to carry. So I find this works well. So I've got some of the dark centers in there. I'm working today on a Strathmore mixed media paper that I've just torn down to a smaller size. I think it was 10 by 10. And I put some tape around the edge so I can keep a white border. So when there are studies, I don't like to labor them too much. I would take these ideas maybe and expand on them in my studio, but I really just consider this to be practice and not trying to come up with a great painting. It's important to practice and not think of every painting as a masterpiece. You want to learn and grow, and if you get something fantastic, you can always put it in a mat and frame it or sell it as a study, but you just don't have to make a masterpiece out of every painting. So in this case, I'm not doing my leaves with my negative painting technique, which is very normal for me. And so this feels a little bit odd to actually be painting the leaves in. I've mixed up my green with the yellow and blue on my palette. I very seldom use a pre-mixed green, and if I do, I usually tweak it with some of the colors in my painting just so that it harmonizes. I often find that the pre-mixed greens just don't quite work with the other colors. So by adding a little bit of a color in your painting, it's going to really help that. Just trying to mix the absolute right color here. I spent about an hour and a half out in my garden painting these, maybe slightly less, so somewhere around 20 to 30 minutes. And I did 3 studies, which I'm going to show you. And for the one study, I unfortunately didn't turn on my camera right at the beginning, but I think you'll get the idea. Starting to paint in the background now. I've just mixed up blue with my blue on my palette, which was Athroquinone, and some white in it, a lot of white. What happens painting outdoors is things change. In this case, subject matter, the poppies blew around in the wind, and also the light changes. And so where the light is hitting on your subject, in this case the flowers, it varies, and you just have to capture things down as quickly as you can and try and come up with the best outcome. It is a good way to learn to paint faster as well and make quicker decisions about what you need to do. I'd also like to take a moment to thank all of you who have supported me on Buy Me a Coffee. This is very helpful to me, and I am so grateful. It gives me an opportunity to upgrade my equipment, keep buying supplies so that I continue painting on this channel. You will find the link in the description below if you want to go and check it out. You can make a donation for any amount that you like. There is no minimums. I did start to really kind of diddle around on this poppy down in the corner and overworked it, I felt. I am using a tiny brush and just coming in and putting a little bit of shading in places. So in this case, when you want to get a lighter red and not a pastel tint of your red, you want to add yellow to it, and that's going to lighten it up. So that's how I've got my lighter reddy orange, is just adding the yellow to the red. Adding a little bit of green in the flower center as well. And I'm going to put in another leaf on this side just for balance. Tone down these dark spots. Even though they're really dark on the flower, I don't like them so dark in the painting. So you have to take some artistic license as well. You don't have to make it exactly like what's going on in the actual atmosphere. So take some creative license. Just coming back in, trying to get a little bit more light areas. So you want to be quite mindful of your values, that you have lights, mids, and darks. So just trying to bring in a little bit of that sun hitting the flower. I've used a 3M tape here, which is low tack, but even with that, it did take off some of my paper. And there's the finished painting. On my second study, I am trying to work loose. I didn't draw anything in. I put a lot of water in my paint, and I'm working wet into wet. So I'm using a cad red, a yellow, and an orange. I'm sticking with the same palette here. When we practice the same painting more than once, we start to develop some muscle memory into it, and it can make it easier. It becomes more familiar. we can actually start doing it by memory. So I may bring these ideas into my studio and just paint poppies from memory and try and abstract them even more than I am doing out here in my garden. I find when I'm looking at a photo or at a actual reference in real life, a setup, a still life setup, or plein air painting, I tend to get caught up in the details more than I like to, and that's why I think I like painting from my imagination to just capture the essence of something. So that is something I really want to explore more, is just capturing the poppy in this case more from imagination. So maybe I'll do that back in my studio. But don't necessarily just do one study of one thing. Do several, because each time you learn something and you'll get different results. You can also set your intention for different results, or take things from the first painting that you liked and bring it into the second. Eliminate things that you didn't like. So one thing I'm really liking on this one is having that darker, intense blue around the orange and leaving little bits of it to show. I'm enjoying that a lot, having that little bit of echo of blue. So I'm coming back in here with some red, just developing my petals. So you can think of the petals as shapes. We want to be looking at where the sun is hitting on the flower. So I'm looking at the flower from the side of the blossom, not directly straight down into it, like I've shown you in the little picture I put up in the corner. So it's a little bit different of a view when the poppy is more closed up. So I try to keep my brush loose and moving. Also try to paint my whole painting, not just stick to one petal at a time. If you are trying to loosen up your work and are struggling with that, I have a PDF download called the 7 Tips to Loosen Up. And they're really good reminders to just pin up on your studio wall and remind yourself of the different things. So one of them is holding the brush at the end like I'm doing here, so that we have less control. If you're going to hold it like a pencil or a pen when you write, you are going to be painting in fine little details. So it all depends on what your objective is. So I kind of like it how it is now with that green on the bottom, but I'm going to try painting in some leaves here with a negative technique, so the reductive technique, and just see how that goes. Now I could have called it finished where it was. I'm coming back in with my Mark All pencil here and just doing a little bit of drawing. So the Mark All is water soluble. It will run if I paint back into it. It may move around some. trying a Neocolor 2 crayon here. It didn't really do all of that much. There wasn't enough contrast in color. It's coming back in with my pencil again and making some more marks. Adding just a little bit of drama here, the little bit of blue. Now let's pull off the tape and see how it looks with a nice crisp border. There we go, it ripped the paper yet again. This may have something to do with the heat and the sun on the tape, perhaps. I'm not sure. I don't usually have this much problem. But there's a finished piece. So this is my third one, and I didn't capture the first part on video, but it's very similar process that I'm doing, and I'm just trying to be looser and also paint fast. So we'll just see how this one goes and how it may turn up different. The poppies are changing as the day goes by. They're starting to close up more. Just drawing in my leaves here a little bit to help with the negative painting. Again, using the Markall pencil. Just using more of my blue and white color. At the end of the video, I will show you individually each of the paintings, and I would love to know what your favorites are and if you got any tips from this painting, and if you're going to try something along this line yourself. If you have ideas for other videos that you think you would enjoy, you can also leave that in the comments. I'm always looking for new ideas. Just coming in with a little bit more light tones in places here. Giving each petal shape a slight bit more definition. Coming in with a touch of teal on this one just to give it a little bit of stronger emphasis. Using a small rigger brush for this and trying to keep loose and painterly, not outlining. A little bit more green. Well, I think I'm coming to the end of this one, and hopefully I'm going to stop before I wreck it. So knowing how to stop is always the hard part. Just putting in a little dark in the center and time to rip off the tape. It looks always so much better with that tape off the edge. So thanks for watching, and here are the 3 by themselves.